I think we're live.
Hello.
We've
got spoiler warning going at the bottom, but we're not
Yeah.
at spoilers yet. Is there a way to?
We haven't got any spoilers at the moment, so I'll just try and get rid of my banner at the moment. So
introductions.
Just hide that for the moment. Hello, welcome. If anyone's here watching, welcome. This is Reading the Globe YA edition, and it's our live for When Stars Are Scattered. So this was the March-April book. So I'm Jack, Spread Book Joy, and with me is Katja from Page Turns with Katja. Welcome, Katja.
Hi.
And so this was our March-April pick, and it's quite a good pick for April, particularly because of People April, which went really well with it, which isn't like Roz, who hosts Reading the Globe, the adult side of things. That's her other one of her other things that she's hosting. She hosts People April, and that's all about biography and memoir. So this kind of worked really well for those months, actually.
Yeah, and it went with bowel cancer awareness as well,
because that's right.
The red in the cover. Yeah.
So it matched quite a few of the different things that were going on, the prompts of the different readathons and things. So we're going to be chatting about this today. So I don't know if we've got anyone watching at the moment. It doesn't look like we've got anyone watching. So hopefully people will be watching back a bit later. We did announce late. It's kind of my fault, I think.
That's okay, but I mean, the other thing is with this weather, I was saying to Roz, very often you've got a lot of people live during winter, but when it's, weather like this, you'd rather be out in the garden socializing.
It's Saturday night as well, isn't it? So like, imagine people are out enjoying themselves. I mean, you say weather like this, weather like you're having, because down here it's not quite the same. It's raining.
It's very sunny, very hot.
Very nice. So I'm looking forward to some of that kind of weather here next week. So Devon next week is like the same, like sort of low 20 degrees Celsius and sunny. So it should be quite nice. But we've just had torrential rain and lots of rain. We had a bit of sunshine this morning, but cloud and rain again most of the day. But I don't mind because I like it to be a bit cooler.
Yeah, no, it's been really hot here. I mean, Milo is pretty much passed out in his bed at the moment. The heat is getting to him, and he's very stubborn. He won't lie on those things other dogs have, which is that cooling down mat. But yeah, so I hope that I can remember When Stars Are Scattered. You're saying that you've just you read it close to the live.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, I think I'll remember stuff.
Well, it's a good job. So yeah, basically with me, if I read it, I mean, a month later, I won't remember details. I'll remember emotions about stories, and this one was very emotional, and I'll remember like how I felt about the story, and I'll remember the key moments. But things like names and so it always escape me. So I always try. I've learned from live streams in the past that I need to make sure I read the book closer to the live stream.
What I do remember is thinking the colorway in the design of this was beautiful throughout. I mean, those were really, it was just such a good graphic novel. So well laid out. You really got the emotions, but equally the way they did the colors and the illustrations and the angles of the, like the angles of the characters also tells you about the emotion. And I thought it was a very empathetic book, a very
absolutely. Yeah, I felt that the same. I think it was basically, for me, I feel that it would I would want to have this in like every classroom everywhere. I think it's a really, really important book. Like you said, the artwork's amazing, and the colors and the perspective that it's shown from as well, very, very good. I kind of got really sucked into it. It really brought me into the place. It gave me such a sense of everything, more so than I think if I'd have just read, like if it was just a chapter book, if it was just sort of a prose rather than like a graphic memoir. I think the fact that it's a graphic memoir really added to your sense of what it's like to be in that place and the scope of it. And I think when he was sort of at the very beginning explaining the size of the camps, things like that, just I thought that gave us a good perspective of it all.
Well, because we're talking about life in a refugee camp, one thing that really struck me about that, because you think of refugee camps as popping up and being there for maybe a year or two, and then this has been like over a decade, isn't it? That particular camp, and it was not. You think of it also as one location, and then there was like loads of walking between the two different sites of the refugee camp. Like they've got different sites and different communities within the camp, and that really struck me, the scale of it.
Absolutely, because he said it's there were I think like 3 camps, if you like, within this huge camp, and they I think he said at one point it'd take you like 4 hours to walk to one other part of the camp, which gives you an idea of the scale of it. It's unbelievable. So and like you said, you think of these as temporary situations, and yet he grew up in the camp, and people are still to this day, that kind of camps are still going, and some people have never left them. Like they've lived in their whole lives in these camps.
I was going to ask, Dadaab, which I think is the name of that refugee camp, it is actually the world's largest, if I'm right. Like it's a large, it's in Kenya, and it's like the world's largest refugee camp.
Yeah,
I'll double check that, but I think because I read this like 2 months ago almost. I was like, oh, I hope I remember. But yeah, I think I came across it saying that it was one of the largest or the largest.
You can imagine it must be. It's just absolutely huge. And so I suppose with the story itself, how did you feel after reading it?
Well, obviously very emotional, but equally it was like it's one of those books that takes you up and down with the character, and the character is obviously the real life person, because it is a memoir, and that's why it fits so well with People April when Roz was co-hosting People April, because as a memoir we're going into what happened to I've forgotten his surname. It's Omar Mohamed, isn't it? Yeah. So we go into the details of Omar's experience, and also his experience of having lost his parents, because he's there in the camp as a child refugee, but also with caring responsibilities. So it has like layer upon layer. You just kind of think, okay, so, you've got a refugee camp, but not everyone's experience is the same. Some people have families, but he just, had his sort of guardian who lived in the tent across the way, the older lady.
Yes.
Yeah. So it struck me that for something so simple, and it's easy to read because it's aimed at middle grade and young adult, it is actually complex enough for adults to kind of go, oh, wow, that's really opened my eyes. And you also go through sort of like trials and tribulations. So it's like this, like up and down with your emotions, isn't it?
Yes, most definitely. And I think your point about it being a middle grade, that I think actually is a really important read for whatever age you are. I think it's an important read, and I also think it's because it is a middle grade, I think it's a good way of learning about the situation that refugees find themselves in without like this the kind of brutality. I mean, I think it is brutal in places, but it doesn't have that brutality of a sort of adult memoir of these things, so I think it's kind of a sort of, I don't know if I call it a gentler way of learning about the refugee experience as an adult, because I don't think it talks down at any point. So I do think it is perfectly like legitimate to read it at whatever age you are, and I think it will work brilliantly. It's aimed at younger audience, but it doesn't dumb it down. It doesn't simplify anything. It doesn't really detract from the heavy emotion in the book at all. I thought it was really well done, and I also loved the structure of the story, because the way he told the story, we are dropped in when they've been at the camp for 7 years already.
Yeah.
So we don't get, it's not a chronologically told memoir. It's they're living in the camp at that point. He's like 11, been there for 7 years with his younger brother, who is neurodivergent of some kind. I think I don't know if he's autistic. I can't remember if it said in the end what he got a formal diagnosis of anything, but his brother is non-verbal apart from one word, and we don't learn what that word is until the very end. We just think, reading it in English as we are, because of course they're speaking Somali and the English is denoted in a slightly different way with some brackets around it, because he does learn English in the camp. But we learn that that is a Somali word, which, I won't do spoilers just yet, but I found that the structure to start with of, this is our life, this is where we live, this is what we do, this is where I take care of my brother, and then we get the sort of shifts forward in time, and we don't find out how they ended up at the camp until towards the end, really, when he's having to recall what happened to him for someone. So I found that structure really interesting, because rather than it being this chronological structure, I think it kind of, I think that aspect for younger readers kind of brings them into the day-to-day life of a refugee to start with.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've got Zach on comments, just mentioned The Bone Sparrow. I haven't read that. Have you read The Bone Sparrow?
No, I've put this comment up. The Bone Sparrow by Zaina Freylon is really good, with similar themes, same age range. I have heard of that book, but I've not read it. There's a couple of sort of refugee memoirs for middle grade, actually, that I don't know if that's a memoir, if that is that fiction, Zach, let us know. But there was another memoir I've read or seen, I think is a graphic novel one. I'll try and remember the name of it before the end. But I think it's a really, like, the way that they're sort of presenting these stories for younger audiences, it's not watered down, but it's presented in a more kind of gentle way, if that makes sense. So
there was a lot that struck me as well about the book and decisions. So I don't think it's a spoiler to say that not all of the children in the refugee camp go to school. Like when they do have the option, at some stage they don't have the option. It's based on ability or what's seen as being, academically able to go on further. But the basic education they're entitled to, but not everyone can go because they've got duties, especially the girls. So I found it also interesting, how Omar reflects how he is seen differently from the girls as well. The girls having to look after all of he had more in common with the girls than the other boys did, because he had caring responsibilities.
Yes. And also, I think I read at the end when I was reading, because at the end you've got a sort of piece written by Victoria Jamieson, and who's the artist, and then written and a bit from Omar Mohamed, where they talk about how they met and his story. And the girls in the story are fictional. So I think it's just highlighting the plight of girls in the refugee camps, isn't it? So I don't think they were actual. They might have been based on.
There is one particular girl who is real.
Oh yes, one particular girl is real, but the girls that he's friends with growing up, I think probably more like a composite of various girls within the camp, and highlighting sort of the different things that the routes that both these girls' lives end up taking, really. And I think that the book did a good job of highlighting the issues that face the specific gender-based problems that women face in those camps as well. And Kat says hello. Hello, Kat.
Oh, no, that's me.
I thought it was yes. Oh, that's it, Katja here. I thought it was Kat. Kat from Kat's Novel Adventures, because she often shows up. That's what I thought it was, but it's you.
I know, it's really weird. When I sign into StreamYard, it signs me in with my Cat W account, which has no channel linked to it. So I don't know why it does that. But anyway, there we go.
Hi, Zach, again. So he says, fiction about Burmese refugees in an Australian camp takes place in modern day. That should be interesting. We'll have to seek it out. And there's Pat. Hi, Pat. It's not you this time. It is someone else. I was like, oh, Pat's Novel Adventures. No, it's you.
Okay. All rhyming, Cat and Pat.
Pat. Yeah, and Zach. Well, kind of. So we're going to be, if you've just joined us, we're talking about When Stars Are Scattered, graphic memoir of this Omar Mohamed's time in a refugee camp in Kenya, where he grew up. And if you haven't read it, I'd highly recommend it. But it did, I have to say, in terms of emotions, I finished the book and I actually sobbed. And it wasn't, what made me really cry, I think, and I'm getting emotional talking about it now, is the story is sad, but it is hopeful at the end. His story is hopeful, but of course his story is quite, is not usual. It's not the usual outcome for a lot of refugees. But what made me upset was because of the just thinking about so much anti-immigration rhetoric in the world at the moment, and actually thinking about refugees and their lives, and anyone who's been displaced because of fearing for their lives or violence or war, whatever, who've lost their homes, and how much they need our compassion and they need help, and everything that's going on in the world at the moment. In this country, there have been some riots this week as well in Northern Ireland, and all of the sort of anti-immigration, anti-refugee sentiment that's being sort of drummed up by certain political elements. And that's what made me cry, because I was reading this and it just made me really, really got to me. So this is why I feel like this should be in every classroom.
Yeah,
should be in every classroom.
And I think what's important as well about it is that long wait for resettlement, that you, like we were saying, you've got the ups and the downs of the emotions of going through this process. And some of it feels like just, the luck of the draw when they have to go for interviews and they go talk about their whole story, and they explain everything, their situation, and then they might not hear anything for like 3 years or something like that. It's like we're talking about a huge length of time, and then all these different things happen in between. So I think for me, that idea of, explaining that this isn't just a case of, someone flees the country where there's all this strife and ends up in a refugee camp, and then comes across to the UK and gets handed a house. Or goes to the US and gets handed a house. This sort of like opens your eyes to what actually is happening for the majority of refugees out there. And this Kenyan camp, I think, so again, I don't think it's spoilers, but in total, he and his brother probably spent about 15 years there or something.
He's 4 when they enter the camp and 19 when he leaves the camp. So and they're children on their own without parents, and they're lucky enough to have someone to take on the role of guardian, who was very kind, but she doesn't live in the same tent as them. She doesn't live with them. She just watches out for them, and she helps them. But the processes they have to go through, the trauma they have to go through initially, then living in the camp, starving, having very little, and then having to relive their trauma and tell their story over and over and over in order to get this golden ticket out of there. It's like it's luck of the draw. There seems to be no rhyme or reason as to why the stages they have to go through, who gets through and who doesn't, because it seems like the way it's portrayed in the book, and it must be the way it feels, they have no idea how they can persuade someone that they are worthy of being given a home, and it's like it's everyone there has a story and a reason that they're there, but it doesn't mean they're going to get sort of given citizenship somewhere else, so, and they're not necessarily given citizenship, they're given the sort of what's it referred to as, the sort of refugee status, I suppose, and while they're awaiting citizenship and stuff, because that's not even the end of it there, is it? Getting out into the country isn't even the end of it. And I think we've seen that in America, in LA at the moment, isn't it? So people who are going through the process being deported, who are going through the process of
and this is why it's so topical, because of things that are happening around the world with deportations and misinformation and
and I think this is why this is such a powerful book and such an important book, especially for anyone, but I would put it into schools, definitely. We've got a few more comments, and I think I might start going to spoilers in a bit. This is about my vlog earlier. Hi, Gareth. Yes, thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed my vlog. I did a vlog about my perfect bookish day yesterday, and nice. I talked about the fact that I'm enjoying The Walking Dead very much. It's very good. It sounds like important. Exactly, Pat. I would highly recommend it. A really, really like no holds barred kind of, this was his life in the refugee camp, but in a kind of, because it's presented for middle grade and up, it's like I said, a gentler way to absorb that information in a sense, even though it's not holding back on the truth of what happened to them. And yes. Oh, absolutely, Gareth. Yeah, it sounds like an essential book to dispel the myths right-wing people perpetuate. Yeah, and so that's why I finished the book and I literally sobbed. And I cry at books, but I don't think I've ever really sobbed. And it wasn't just the book; it was just the whole situation that's going on in the world and the way people are the way hatred is being drummed up for the most vulnerable people who deserve support and compassion. Anyway, I'll keep saying it probably, but I literally just had a good sob when I finished reading it. Okay, I might put the spoiler thing up. So shall we do that? Should we talk spoilers? Because otherwise I'm going to be talking in and around things.
Okay.
So we're going to have some spoilers. And it's not a fiction book. So it's not sort of a story in that sense. I mean, you kind of know from what we've been saying that this does have a good outcome for
Omar,
in the end for Omar, but yeah. So
the first spoiler I can think of is the lady that took on the guardianship, who lives in the tent across from him and his brother, and she looked out for them, did a lot for them, but of course always wanted them to be independent, because she was aware that their application process would be different to her application process because they were never deemed to be a family. So that is something that makes you feel really emotional towards the end, because of course he didn't think about that.
No,
she is his family. So that made me it made me so emotional. I'm tearing up now.
Yes.
Because of course he's like, oh, okay, so after all these years we can finally go forward. And she's like,
yeah,
I took you to the place for your interview. I did all this stuff, but I didn't get interviewed with you. So it's like, oh my gosh.
Me tear up thinking about it as well.
Yeah.
So what an amazing woman. And when they're discussing the sort of trauma that she's been through, she's very kind to them both, and they kind of have flashbacks to when she first takes on their guardianship, because they're two boys on their own, a 4-year-old and his brother must have been 2 or 3, couldn't have been more than that. And then she's taken on both of these traumatized boys who've walked and walked for miles to get to the refugee camps, who've lost, like they don't know where their mum is, they've witnessed what happened to their dad, and then basically they get to the camp and this woman takes them on, and Omar says, and his 11-year-old self is narrating it to start with and talking about his day-to-day life, and he says, oh, and Fatima, sometimes she has days where she's quiet and she can't talk, and obviously she's like having a traumatic trauma response, like she's like she can't, and you learn later that she'd lost 4 boys, 4 children. And so she's looking after them, and she then they never call her mum, or they never think about her as replacing their mum throughout, but she does raise them, and she is the closest thing they have to a mother. So when it comes time for them to leave, rip your heart out, because she's not considered family, so she's not going with them. Really, really, really upsetting. I think the part as well that I found was really important was the discussion around the girls, and like I said, these girls, that the characters who were fictional characters, but like a composite of various girls and their experiences in the refugee camp. So when they go to school, there are fewer girls in the school. When he finally is persuaded that he can go to school, and he's given a book and a pen, and everyone thinks he's like, wow, where did you get this book and this pen from? And they're being taught in classes of around, I think it's probably about 50 children in the room or something like that, boys on one side, girls on the other. And there are fewer girls, because the girls obviously, he says, oh, lots of the girls don't get the opportunity. He suddenly realizes that they're doing everything that the boys don't. Boys get to go and play, and the boys get to go to school, and the girls have to clean and help cook and look after the babies. And so culturally, they have less opportunity to go to school. And the ones that are there, because they know that that's their opportunity, they're making the most of it. So I think the girls are called Halima and Nemo.
And and also marrying really young, because so I think it touched on that as well, the fact that the girls are expected to start families really early.
I was trying to figure out how old is it Nemo that gets married, I think it is, and she's top of the class. Like, she's the brightest person in the class, and she's determined to get a scholarship to a Canadian university, and ends up her father marries her off because he thinks that's the best thing for her, and also for them, because they have other mouths to feed within their tent. And she gets married off to a much older man. That's only briefly mentioned. He's older, and therefore he's less strict with her, so she's able to still go and talk to her school friends. So it was just, I don't know how old. I think she's supposed to be like 14 or 15, because they say she's older.
My guess was like she's 15.
And so it's her that persuades him, because at one point Omar doesn't want to go and take his exams because his brother goes missing and ends up getting beaten up in one of the other refugee camps, because he feels like he's not there to watch his brother, so he doesn't want to go and take his exams. And he meets Nemo, who is by this stage, I don't know if she's pregnant by this stage, but she starts just saying, you're being so selfish, you've got the opportunity to do these things, your brother is fine. Like, you. And also what I loved with this representation of the brother is, initially Omar thinks he has to do everything for him, and other people persuade him. It's like, no, you don't have to do everything for him. He has got skills and talents, and he's thoughtful, and he's kind, and he's good with younger children. So I found that really, really interesting.
But education was definitely one of those things where he could very easily have decided not to listen to that first teacher and go into the school. And that would have meant a totally different life for him, because it's in the school that he meets the social worker. And, that wouldn't have happened if he hadn't kept going to the school and then being recommended as well by the teacher.
And kind of having certain people recognize these things in him, because of course he picks up all of this stuff, the English that he picks up before he goes to school is just from listening to other people, and he does sort of sits and does maths and stuff so that he can try and remember how to count, and he's not got anyone helping him with any of this. And of course their guardian Fatima never went to school, because of course she talks about the fact that she didn't think school was important for girls, because when she was younger no one would send girls to school. But then she starts to recognize the value in it. And I just think, like you say, the difference here in his outcomes was the education that he had, because that allowed him at the end of all of it to go on to university in America, which is amazing, really. And sort of he wanted to, from that point, be a social worker and work with refugees, and that is what he ended up doing. So and how many lives has he helped because of it as well?
And his journey was, he had to do so many things. I mean, he was working part-time, studying, and he ended up, I think, working with refugees with a church service, wasn't it? Because
yes.
I'm trying to remember the name of it, but there's this initiative helping refugees sort of integrate and, come, helping them settle, because it's just such a culture shock as well.
Yeah, so he goes to work for, they're called the Church World Service or something.
That's what I'm
yes, Church World Service. He becomes a resettlement case manager, and there are pictures of him at the end, which I loved to see. The pictures of him and Fatima. And then, of course, like the huge spoiler of it all throughout the entire book is that you're given the impression that his mum, he's never going to find his mum, and that his mum has died, because they hear at one point that the village that they're from was completely destroyed and everyone in it was either killed or taken prisoner, and that would have been his mum. So he hears nothing about his mum, and then they find out years later when he's married and he has children, he still has people looking out for his mum, and he hears about her and he goes and finds her in the refugee, and she's still there, or she was still there when this book was published. So they were trying to get her to come and live with him in America, and he hadn't seen his mum for nearly 30 years. which
and I think the book was published in 2020, so I don't know what's happened since, but
yes,
you do wonder what the chances are of them sort of like being united.
Yeah. So that was really, and then the last bit of the sort of spoiler with his brother says this word constantly, and it's the only word he says, and to English ears it doesn't sound like a word, but it is a word, and it's a Somali word for mum, isn't it? So that's what his brother says the whole way through, and his brother's saying it the whole way through the novel. It's mama or something, I think he says it, that means mama. And he's been saying it the whole way through, and you're just like, oh, I didn't even,
because it just sounds like a sound, doesn't it? Like a random sound.
And the way it's sort of written in English, sort of the English alphabet, I suppose, it's like it just, I was just, that kind of was a big moment for me. Okay. Zach actually has quite a good. The last non-fiction book which made me cry was The Six by Lauren Grush, about the first 6 women astronauts. The state of the world is most of what made it tragic. Yes, I think this is it, isn't it? Because the enormity of these individual stories, but what they represent about the world and the state of the world, I think that's what really got me. I just ended up putting the book down. I started feeling myself crying, and I ended up having to let out a big sob and just cry for the state of the world at the moment. Zach's asked, does it talk about FGM, and does that happen in the camps? It doesn't, and I think that's probably because of the age that it's aimed at. But I read a really good memoir about that, of a woman who went through it, and the book's called Cut, and her name is Hibo Wadere. She's a Somali woman who wrote her memoir, and she was relocated to the UK. I think she lives in London, and the book was recommended because when I worked in London, we had a huge Somali community, and the school I worked at, huge like Somali community within the school, and Islington, where I lived and worked, a lot of Somalis were resettled in Islington when they came over from the war in Somalia. So there's a huge Somali community there, and the Whittington Hospital in Archway is one of the world leaders in FGM, because the Somali community that settled there, a lot of treatment for FGM went on at the Whittington Hospital, so they sort of became one of the leading places for treating FGM. And it's, so it doesn't really talk about it, but if you want to find out more about that and about the sort of because it's such a hidden thing as well, that you don't have the full picture of the numbers and what goes on. But that's a good memoir about it if anyone wants to find out more. But I imagine it has, in the camps, they're so on top of each other. I wonder how if it does happen in the camps, if it's kept, how they would keep it hidden, how they would keep it, because it's still, imagine the camps, the countries that the camps are in, is it, I mean, Kenya, it would be illegal, but who knows? I just don't know the situation in camps, I'm afraid. But that's a good memoir of a UK woman. So at the end of it all, I'd highly recommend this to anyone, really, because it opened my eyes to the scale of the camps, to the not just the size of them physically, but the sort of the longevity of these camps that were supposed to be temporary. And
one thing that I am wondering about is this was published in 2020, and I just double checked to see who the publisher is, and it's Faber and Faber, so it's a fairly mainstream publisher. But we were just thinking about how in the US there's loads of arts defunding going on at the moment, and a lot of this is also a lot of censorship. Not just international, narratives. It's also a lot of censorship with US authors seeing their books yanked out of schools and off the library shelves and stuff. And I was just thinking what a difference just 4 or 5 years can make to access to stories like this, and to the importance of actually having these stories, because they are, as we say, so informative. I thought I knew about refugee camps, and I thought, you know what? I'm very clear that it's far worse than what we see on the media. But I didn't realize how bad it can be, and how persistently it can go on. So I think, given the 15 years that he was there with his brother, what you see over that time as well is the effect that it's having on the people around them. So, you know, his best friend who is also good at school,
Yes.
what happens with that family? Because the dad initially was always, you know, showing off and saying, oh, I'm going to end up in the US and I've got all these contacts and we're going to be there. And or he might have been talking about Canada, but in the end, the dad loses all hope and he doesn't even try anything anymore. And he's always like drunk and beating up the kids. And you're just like, oh, that, you know, like went downhill so quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because of course
not.
the resilience it would take to live through this situation. And I tell you what really struck me as well, which has just never occurred. I mean, why would it occur to you? Because you think it's a minor thing to be bored, right? So you don't think, well, there's that a real problem. It's he says the boredom, because they don't work. What they do is maybe like take care of, if they do lucky enough to have an animal or something to take care of it, or if they have to go and they're just standing in line.
You're not allowed to work. You're not allowed to earn this, you know.
They stand in line for water, for food, to wash their clothes, to everything they do is just waiting in lines. Now, that is just hell. That is just that will drive anyone's mental health, regardless of the everything else. I mean, it sounds like when they say, oh, the boredom, the lack of stimulation for anything, every day is the same as well. Every day is the same.
And the rations are really small. I mean, there's times these people are so hungry until the next time the food is, you know, allocated again.
Yeah, he called them empty days, didn't he? Empty days. Yeah. Empty days, the days just before the food ration comes in. Goodness me. Yeah, I just, that didn't strike me. I didn't even think about that. They've got nothing to do. That's it. They wait in line and they have nothing to entertain them. They have nothing to do. They can't, you know, if they go to school, they're lucky if they go to school. But the school as well, there's so many of them cramped into this place. And the teachers in the school are refugees. So the teachers in the school are traumatized, and some of them are inspiring and some of them are just, you know, some of them less so. But the teachers are also refugees, you know.
Yeah. One thing that I was thinking about is these boys had nothing. I mean, they had the clothes on their backs and pretty much, like you say, when he had the book and a pencil, all the other boys thought, wow, how amazing, and how he was so impressed that his friend had a lantern to go out at night, you know, to be able to see in the dark and stuff, and to study inside the tent. And so when his brother wanders off and ends up out of the safety of their particular camp and is sort of like seen as, oh, okay, well, he's a stranger in this camp, so we'll just steal I think they stole his shoes and his trousers, didn't they? The brother, the shorts. So it's like, you know, they've got nothing and now he's got like really, really nothing.
I think the whole thing, really, when they pool their resources, like, oh, you don't have any room to study because your tent's full of family. I've got room. We've only got my brother to contend with, so come over here, bring your lantern, and we can both study. So that's how they did it. And the fact that he had notes to revise because he's got a pencil and paper, so he's, you know, relatively speaking, he's well ahead of the game because he's got this notebook and pen, which is like, when you think it's just that is what we would consider basic needs for school, is a pencil and paper, you know. And Pat says, it doesn't live in a place where there's much censorship, thankfully. I fear there would be so much pushback to this book right now in schools, or fear of pushback. Yeah, I think in the US, the sort of contention around books in schools is something very, I don't know, it's not uniquely American. However, the intensity of it is something I as an educator over here in the UK, I've never experienced anything like that, thankfully. But we do have, you know, I don't think I've ever experienced a parent protesting or complaining about any particular book that we've had in school or read to children. You know, and I worked at a Catholic school, you know, for years, and I don't think we had any sort of protest about that. But like, there's no sort of official line to go down for banning books, because I don't think it wouldn't sort of fly in the school. The head teacher or whoever wouldn't pay attention to it. But it's such a powerful lobbying in America for banning of books and policing of what's being read in schools. Yeah, it's a bit worrying. Okay. I can't think of any other things I wanted to mention in the book. I think we've covered most of the things I wanted to mention or talk about. But yes, the boredom part, that was a big eye opener for me, because I didn't even consider it. And that the effects on the mental health. And like you said, the lack, like, you have to be one of the most resilient people to go through a situation like this after going through the trauma of having to escape home and violence, and then have to live like this. So yeah, I think this is what it's really shared, and I think it gives a real true picture of what people go through to get to safety, which is why it's so important.
There's two twists that I enjoyed at the end, aside from, like, finally he gets the opportunity to go to the next stage and arrive in the US and everything. Of course, the first twist we mentioned was the fact that they realized that their mother was alive all that time, and the reunion that they have in Kenya. But the other twist was the fact that his brother, when he had gotten lost in this other portion of the refugee camp, gets rescued by this family, and this the young girl who's about his age looks after his brother and helps him. And at the end, that's who he marries. So it's like, oh, wow.
Because that family ends up not far from them in Arizona.
Yep.
Isn't it Arizona or is it Pennsylvania? I can't remember where it is they end up. I think he goes to the University of Arizona. But yeah, so they end up not far, I think, from each other, and he ends up marrying her, which is lovely. And he ends up meeting, so the way that he met the author, the artist and author, Victoria Jamieson. So she doesn't do you're talking about the colours in the book. There is a colourist who did the colours.
Yeah, so I thought. And yeah. Can you remember the name of the colorist?
It was in the back, and she mentions the colorist who she works with.
I think it was a Somali American artist called Iman. Is it right?
Let me see. I think it's in here. Iman Geddy. Yeah,
that's it.
An Atlanta-based designer and illustrator who's passionate about using graphic arts for social good. So yeah, so that's Victoria Jamieson and Omar Mohamed, and they met because she was volunteering at I don't know if it's the same place where he works, and he'd already started writing his story because he wanted it to be shared, particularly with children. I think he wanted to share his story, and so she was looking for a story to share, so she wanted to write do a graphic novel about it. So it basically was, kind of like kismet, really. They kind of met. And then they got to know each other over years, and in between their hard work, because he was working really hard at the time, like his job and his big family and everything else. So he told his story to her, and they finally got it down and got it written. And so it's pretty amazing because they're right. They both wanted this to be what I think is very successfully done. It's emotional, it's informative, and I think it does give you a complete view of that. They wanted to teach children. They wanted to have this in classrooms, and I think if you are a teacher out there, do get it for your classroom.
And I passed it to two friends as well, and they loved it. But I just had a very quick look at my notes, and he did arrive in Arizona, and then when Jamieson moved to Pennsylvania through her volunteer efforts, she went to the headquarters of the Church World Service in Lancaster, and that's where she met him. So you're right.
That's it. So she met him there, and they basically what an amazing, fortunate for him. He's like, I'm writing my story. She's like, oh, I'm an author. Like, we could do it this way. Perfect. It worked really well. I think like we were saying at the very start of the show, being a graphic memoir, I think really was effective.
That worked.
Gareth is saying about book banning. He feels like it's completely different over here. Not an expert, but I hardly see it here, if at all. I don't either, Gareth. Like, you and I have been teaching about the same length of time here in the UK, and at different age groups, and I've never ever had anyone try to tell me that the book was unsuitable. And I was a school leader as well, who were the sort of people that we would be the ones they would come to about it. And I've never had that here in the UK.
So one thing that I know about what's happening in the UK is a little bit less obvious is in libraries, and there's a couple of news articles. So I was going to do a discussion video on it, but I read these articles in March, April, and they kept coming out, and was talking about how librarians are being encouraged to have fewer LGBTQ plus stories that they're sourcing. And so the importance that these articles were saying is fill out the forms, because libraries have forms where you can request particular books. So if you want to keep seeing these narratives, keep requesting them, because what happens is if we're sort of like complacent and we go, well, I can't find it in my library, so oh well, that's going to continue. It's going to continue changing the face of what you see available in the library. So you have to ask for it and demand it.
That's interesting. That's good to know. I think you should do a video on that, actually. Yeah, let's put that out there. Because
I'm trying to get my thoughts together about it, because we're also having a discussion in Discord, because a lot of us are passionate about using our libraries. So we're talking about Libby, going into the library. And then someone was saying, I think what we need to do is we need to make sure that the books we're choosing are available in the library. And I was like, oh, that's one step too far for me, because, you know, like for these books that we're talking about together, not everything is going to be in the library because of reasons. And these are the reasons, you know, and we're not aware of it, because we walk in there and we go, okay, well, I'll just stick to what's available here. But that narrows your scope, really.
Yeah, it does actually. And actually, so I've requested a lot of books since I've moved to Devon. I've been using the library services constantly. Like I use Libby and BorrowBox all the time, but I also get physical books from the library. One I just returned yesterday was the Waterstones Children's Book Prize winner, one of them, because there were 3 and in different categories. And the one that I requested was Rune, which is a middle grade graphic novel. And it's like a fantasy novel. But what's great about it is the representation within it. So the lead character is profoundly deaf, and so they have BSL in it. But one of the other characters is gay. So so basically, the representation in this book is, and it's not made a thing out of. It's just is. Okay, it just is. And it's just, the representation of this book is wonderful. And I was shocked, because I kept thinking, right, Waterstones Children's Book Prize is a good indicator of a big selling book, right? And a popular book, and a book that is important and that we should be looking at and to see why it's won this prize. And the Cafe at the Edge of the Woods was one, and then Rune. And there was another book which looks really good. It's about a boy in a London school who's it's about a bully. He's a bully, and so it's about him, and he's also being drawn into gangs. So it's kind of a really current, like a really good book. But Rune, I couldn't find it. I thought that will be in every library, because graphic novels and fiction, they're calling it now, is probably the most popular form of reading.
I didn't know they're calling it fiction. That's interesting.
Fiction. So fiction isn't graphic novels, but you can include it within that. It's this new term they've come up with. So it's because older readers, like middle grade, are liking books with pictures that play a part now. And if you can, I've been told that by sort of a children's writing group I was in, if you can pitch a book like that has a picture element that is for older readers, they're calling it fiction. So it's not a picture book, it's fiction.
Okay.
Then you're kind of in with a, like that's becoming much more popular, because they want less. Well, I mean, it's tragic, because it's like the state of reading. It's like they want less to read on the page. Well, put it that way. But the graphic novel elements, graphic novels and manga especially, is really popular, of course. But I thought that book, that's bound to be in the library, because surely they keep an eye on these things. I had to order it. It was in one library in Devon. I had to order it and wait for it to come to my library. But I keep putting down requests for them to buy stuff.
Yeah, and that's important. That works.
Yeah, they're tiny services. But when I hear about these books, and I keep thinking, well, these are great books, and these are books that are kind of like, you know, that should be in the libraries, I'll make a request that they buy it. I have yet to hear back anything about any of the requests that I've put in for the local libraries. But the library services here are so underfunded. In fact, they're run by a charity in Devon.
Well, it doesn't surprise me. So I did do a little bit of research, but I've still got a little bit more to do. I'm hoping the video is out next week. I haven't recorded, but I keep finding little bits of information where I'm going, I didn't know this. So yeah, because I don't work in the library service, so it's all news to me.
Let's see. Pat saying, where are we? Oh, hang on, I'm going back. I've gone past it. You see, all these books being challenged are on the curriculum for study. So which books, Gareth, are the ones that are being challenged? You mean in the UK, or do you mean in the States, in America? I wonder. I don't know. Pat, I never saw it in my 40-year teaching career either. It's a different world now, though. Yes, yeah, really is, unfortunately. I'm requesting every time I go to the library now. Brian at Bookish just requested all of his books for Pride from his library, and he's in Texas. Good for him. But yeah, this is it. It's but I do the same. Like if I've got some amazing books with just such beautiful picture books with LGBT representation in them. And when I was working in the last school job that I had, I brought them in. I just was like, they were in my classroom library, and I just recommend them. That's kind of why I started Upspread Bookjoy as well, because I wanted good high quality stuff for schools, but also good representation, because of course I think schools have done an awful lot here in the UK, primary schools, to broaden the sort of scope of the authors and characters on offer in schools. There's been a huge amount of work that's gone into schools on that, in primary schools particularly. But library services, I don't know. Yeah, so that's one.
I really hope that continues, like in education, like for that to be so positive, because like I say, it was really eye-opening for me to read these articles earlier in the year. And it wasn't just like, I think it was in The Guardian, in The Independent, and possibly The Bookseller did an article as well. And these were all sort of like throughout March, because some data had come out about library services. So of course it was a theme that a lot of different reporters picked up. And as I was reading that, I was like, I wouldn't have known this.
No, I wouldn't have considered it. So it's good information. Yeah. Oh, the 24. Is that the banned books project that you had that you was doing with MJ? I think. Is that the 24 for 24? I think it might be. And colleagues talk about the books currently being taught, and it's not changed. Yeah, so I find that the whole idea of books being challenged, I mean, books were challenged here on the curriculum for being too old and white in the UK. So
the comment just above is all the ones challenged or banned in the US were being studied in UK colleges and universities as acclaimed classics.
That's it. There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because like what they've been doing, basically what we've called it over here is like, we're diversifying, trying to diversify our curriculum and diversify the range of books and the characters and the authors in books and the representation in schools. And that's been a huge body of work that's been going on for some time, because the I was going to say it's the UK Literacy Association, but it might be the Reading Agency, and they do every year, they produce a report on published books, published children's books, and the range of, they look at characters based like gender of characters, ethnicity of characters, sexual orientation, that kind of thing, and they look at the range of characters being published in children's books. And it was so woeful, their first report, I think it was like 2018 or something, and it really highlighted this real sort of narrow focus in children's literature in particular. And because of that, they've really kind of pushed this move to diversify what's coming out in publishing, and schools being the ones who are demanding this kind of more diverse range of authors and characters. I think it's really increasing minimal amounts though. Every year.
What I find interesting though about the moment people talk about diversity, there is obviously a group of people that get triggered by the idea of, oh, you're talking about EDI or DEI. I think it's over there. But the moment you talk about diversity, some people get triggered. And the reality is that when these case studies are happening, they are specifically looking to see what's underrepresented. But really, you don't even have to necessarily go, okay, this is a diverse book. What we're looking for is universality. I always think the books that people are saying, oh, this is a good book because it doesn't pander to diversity. Actually, what it's done is it's stripped down and it's not representing the people around us.
Yeah.
So for me, the books that people are going, oh, at least it doesn't pander to diversity. It's not actually, it's pandering to a world that doesn't exist.
Right. Well, it's a good
way I feel,
because I've remembered the name of the report, and it is the Centre for Literacy in Primary Education, the CLPE. They would produce this report every year. The report is called Reflecting Realities, and that's the report. So it's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So they call the report Reflecting Realities, and it was the very first study ever done in the UK of the diversity in children's literature. So it's funded by the Arts Council here in the UK, and that report was like when I was a deputy head, and the first one came out, I think it was like 2018, the first one came out, but they do it every year now, and they see it's like a slight increase each year in the different categories. But what it did was force a conversation in schools, a much needed conversation, and it has really pushed that move to reflect reality in our book corners and in our school libraries. So yeah. Okay, and actually I do think because actually diversity for some people is like, and I think it's being pushed even more over in the States as a word that's kind of very divisive now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so Pat, I diversify curriculum. We're going backwards here. It's very worrying, isn't it? It's very worrying that the strong lift others up, the weak hold others down. Yes, no, absolutely, I completely agree. But those reports, by the way, if anyone ever wants to look at them, if you're interested in them, they're really great. And I think they go back, like I said, to 2018. The very first one. Yeah, 2018 was the very first one.
I'll definitely have a look, because I've never, like, when you're not working in education, I don't think you necessarily are aware of reports like that.
No, and it had a huge impact on primary educators, because it's the primary for literacy in primary education. They're really big. The CLPE do a lot of good work. So yeah, worth looking at. But yes, let's do what we can to get this. I'm going to make sure this is in our libraries in Devon. I'm going to try and push for that.
Yeah, it's a really good pick. You picked that one, and I was like, yeah, I'm really enjoying this.
Yeah, it's been on my radar for some time, and I'm really glad we picked it as well. It was a great pick. And talking about great picks, if you have no more else to say about this one,
we
have our next one, which I can't find my copy of. So
I've got a book, but I took off the nice graphic representation of it, the dust jacket, because I like my bookshelves to have quite plain covers. So it's just like this red.
We're going to be reading Kiki's Delivery Service. Yes. So yeah, that is it's the current book, isn't it? It's not the next book, it's the current book. It's the current book. So for May and June, Kiki's Delivery Service is the book that the translated fiction book for the Reading the Global YA project. So if you'd like to join us for that, I think we're doing the live show over on your channel at some point.
We are. So obviously this is for June. Is it for June and July? It's June and July, or was it May and June?
May, June. Yeah.
May, June. Okay, then we would be doing the live in July. I'll double check. I'll give notice. We haven't even picked a date yet, but yes, we'll be wrapping it up. And so if anyone's watched the anime and loves the anime, the anime was actually really faithful. So sometimes you find that Studio Ghibli as brilliant on, and I would say this is a really faithful one, having now read the book. I read it years ago.
Oh my God.
So yeah.
Oh, see, I've never read it. So she has written hundreds of books for children, and I think it was her first book, Kiki's Delivery Service, because she talks about, I think it's her first book.
I think so. I think so. I think she wrote it like in the 80s, and she did it as a series, so you can actually follow Kiki quite a bit after. But when I got this book, which is probably about 4 years ago, there was only this one translated into English. I did notice that in German there was like 3. So 3 in the series. But yeah, everyone's aware of this one, and it reads like a standalone.
And yes, I think in English, there's a couple of things maybe in English, but not as many. But she's written hundreds of books. She's 90. Oh, she's still going. Yeah, so she's written hundreds of books. This is her most famous internationally, I should say. It's her most famous because of the Studio Ghibli film, which is great. Which is a great film. Very narratively, very strange, but it's more about Kiki's development. Like it's an interesting. I'll be interested to talk about it. I love the film, so I might have to watch the film as well as read the book, just to see, because it's been a while since.
Sorry, Pat, is that my sound or our sound? Like, or is it just Jack's sound? I can hear Jack okay, but all right, okay. So maybe it's our joint sound, sort of like going in and out. Who knows?
If anyone else let us know as well, if it is us. That would be a shame. It's been quite an interesting discussion, I have to say. Enjoying it. And the next book, yes, really looking forward to Kiki's Delivery Service. And the picture is because she was inspired by a picture her daughter drew of a witch flying above a city with a radio with music coming out of it, which is the image of Kiki on the cover, and it's also the image from the Studio Ghibli films that you see, really. So really interesting. We're both going in and out. Oh, the sound's quite bad for both of you.
Oh no. It might be a
great live stream, but you can still make us out, hopefully. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So very quickly before we head off, just to say that the classic strand, the current book is Baron Bagi by Alexander Lerner Helenia, and it's a book that's under 100 pages. It's a really fun, sort of like fever dream of a book, so surreal. Definitely time to still read it before we go on to the next one. And then the contemporary thing, Haruki Kawakami's The Third Love. And she was shortlisted for the International Booker this year.
Big Bird or something. I have Bird. Yeah, I've got it on my TBR, but I haven't read it yet.
So me too. I've got it to read, and now that I've read The Third Love, I'm definitely going to read that one and her other ones.
Yeah, so, I'm looking forward to that, because that's a really interesting kind of speculative fiction about a future where children are born from. This is the one that I have the bird one. Is that one where the children are born? Or no, I'm thinking I might be thinking of a different book entirely.
I think you might be. Oh, well, I'll look at the eye with another. You might be thinking of the one by the Sayaka Murata. Vanishing World, and that one I found really, really. So 3/4 of Vanishing World was good, and then very. It gives you Brave New World vibes, but then the last quarter I just found really ick. The 4-star concept where you kind of go, oh, this is like a new Brave New World with a different slant and everything. But by the time you get to the end, if you've got a stronger stomach than I have, you're probably still going to go, it's good. But for me, I kind of went, now it's like gone down to a 3 or 2.5.
I think Gareth's quite a Sayaka Murata fan. I've got which I haven't read. No, it is what I'm thinking of. So Under the Eye of the Big Bird is about a future where some children are made in factories with cells from rabbits and dolphins.
Oh, wow. So
that's why
so I've got that. I purchased it in February, and then I read all the other international book ones, and I was like running out of steam, so I haven't read that one yet.
I think it's it sounded really interesting. So it's kind of like a speculative fiction, dystopian. I love a bit of dystopian fiction.
Okay, so Hiromi Kawakami, yeah.
Well, anyway, we wish where you are, but not so much here. Might be some sunshine coming.
Yeah, it's extremely warm.
Too much, a bit too muggy. But I hope you have a lovely evening. And everyone, thank you so much for joining us in the chat. Let's see if there's any other comments before we go. It's only been for the last few minutes. We can still tell what you're saying. Thank you, Zach. That's good to know. Kiki's Delivery Service, a good excuse to watch the film again too. Yes, exactly. Just started getting bad recently, the sound. How weird. Must be StreamYard. Very Norman Collier. Jack, you'll know the reference. Will I? Oh my gosh, I feel like I should. Oh yeah. Actually, yes. Now I've seen the picture. Okay. Let's see. Kawakami. I've mentioned her in a video. I'm putting out an extra favorite non-genre books. I really liked Earthlings. It goes dark and off the rails at the end too. Oh, how are we doing, Milo? Yeah, that's what I'm sure I watched Gareth's review of Earthlings. He said it went off the rails a bit at the end. A bit late, just caught the end, just came back from the UK. Oh, did you have a lovely time? I hope you had a lovely time. Did you visit any nice places? Where did you visit? You put it into the chat. We're just saying goodbye now, though. I feel like I want to know. Still stick it in the chat. Thank you, Pat. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I really enjoyed the discussion. Thank you, Katja. A great book, and looking forward to the next one. All right. I do. Take care, everybody. Bye.